Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mind Your Mental. Just a reminder that this podcast is not meant to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health professional. I know they are hard to find, and I get that. I have a bunch of resources on my website if you need them, but I am not your clinician. I am a psychologist, but I am not your psychologist. So if you need any specific help, please look for the help of a licensed mental health professional. Learn all you can learn from the podcast. Enjoy the episode. All right, Maverick. So today we have Natasha Alford. I am a huge fan of her. I've been watching her on the Griot for quite some time. She is the Vice President of Digital Content and anchor at the Griot. She's also an award-winning journalist, digital host, and millennial media executive. She leads a national team in reporting the most critical news and issues impacting the Black community. She's also a CNN political analyst where she offers commentary on the news, politics, and movements of the moment. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, Guardian, Vogue, Oprah Mag, and today we are going to be discussing her amazing book, which dropped today, American Negra. So welcome, Natasha Alford. We're going to be talking about the book today. I got an advanced copy. Now, here's the deal, guys. The book is out today. Okay, now, if you weren't able to get it previously, that's probably because you don't have the end that I do, because I got early access, but it's fine. So get the book. I loved the book. I already have, if you're not watching this, if you can hear this, I already have that's me slapping my notes in the books. Okay. So get the book. It's called American Negra by our guest today, Natasha Alford. It says Natasha S. What's the S stand for?
It stands for Sonia. That's
Sonia.
My abuela,
okay.
My grandmother. Yeah, my grandmother's name.
Yes, and it's a really cute picture of her on the front. I like it. I love baby pictures. And a bam picture of you on the back. Look at that. All right.
There I am.
I love it. So I'm not sure if you know this, but I find Black identity development across the entire lifespan to be my main area of interest in research. It's from teaching and reading to clinical practice. And in reading this book, I really found that to be a recurring theme within it, the evolution of your cultural identity. And when I say cultural identity, I don't even mean the way some people think in limitations of race and ethnicity, but also with your gender and your profession and the intersectionality of all that. So tell me more about why it was so important for you to share this journey in your book, because we get you all the way from childhood up until now.
Wow. Well, first of all, I have to thank you because you're one of the first reviews that I'm getting.
Oh, good.
So as an author, you write and you're just away for a few years writing a book. So you don't feel like an author, even as these things are happening. And so I'm just starting to get reactions and it's making me feel like, wow, you wrote something that people are reading. So it's a beautiful experience. We know that Blackness is diverse. We say it all the time that Black people are not a monolith. And yet so many stories are missing from mainstream conversation. And as a child, you grow up hearing about Blacks and Latinos, always separate, right? Always at the opposite end of the spectrum. That is sort of a decision society has made about how to describe and to group people. Mm-hmm. And so for someone like me who sits at the intersection of those identities, it created a lifelong journey for me of trying to understand what it meant to occupy that space. And there is so much history. There's a shared history that exists between Black Americans in particular, African Americans, and Latinos, which even that phrase is really just an inaccurate phrase when you think about it. That terminology is inaccurate, but Puerto Ricans specifically, which is, the other half of my cultural identity. This plays out particularly in cities like New York City and Chicago, right? All these hubs where we sort of end up together because history has made us migrate north, looking for opportunity, looking for ways to really seek out the American dream. And so it was always my dream to create a portrait of what it was like to live at this intersection. But I wanted to do so in a way that was thoughtful, in a way that was educational. If people didn't know certain things about these histories, that they would come out reading this book, not just knowing about my life, but understanding society. That was the vision. That was the hope. That's how we have American Negra today. And I'm happy to also talk about the title. I don't know if it resonated with you or connected with you in any way, but there's also intentionality in that title.
Hey, everyone, just a reminder that Mind Your Mental is not just a podcast. It is also a Amazing community, if I do say so myself. It's phenomenal. I mean, you get more access to me. What more could you want in this life? So, if you want to join the community, if you're not already on the community, go to my social media. My social media is the same, Raquel Martin, PhD, and DM me the word community so you can get details on joining this amazing flipping community. You get more access to me, y'all. Like, I'm a delight. All right. All right. Hope to see you there. It resonated with me because in reading the book and learning about you discussed, I don't want to do spoilers, but you discussed you were doing an interview and someone was translating and you asked them, like, well, why did you use this word instead of that word? When I got to that part, I was like, oh, that's why she named it this. So can you tell more about that story? It's so hard to talk about books that I have read and no one else has read it yet. Because I always want to be like, that part when she was like, and she asked the translator, why'd you use this word? And they said this. And I was just like, oh, that's where the title came from. It's so hard. So can you provide the basis of why you chose that title in the first place?
So let me explain the title this way, and I can actually do it without giving away too much in the book. When you grow up as a Black girl, doesn't matter your background, but you're in a Latino or a Spanish speaking in particular community or neighborhood, sometimes people will call you negra. They will refer to you literally by the color of your skin or your race. You might hear the word negra, you might hear the word morena, and people often say that it is a term of endearment, which is quite fascinating, right? That to refer to someone by the color of their skin has been used as a term of endearment. It's like saying my Black girl. Now, negrita is an interesting form of that because ita is to make something small, but tangent there. But you're referred to by the color of your skin in a society and a community that says they're not color conscious. A society that often says we are colorblind, right? We are people of color. Latinos are not really obsessed with race in the way that you US folks are with, your segregation and your Black versus white. We don't care about those things. And yet, in that community, you will be identified by the color of your skin. Now, the word negra can also be an insult. It can be used to tear someone down. It can be a term that people may not always embrace. They don't want to be called Black. And so the declaration of being an American Negra is to, one, raise visibility that, Black Latinas, Black Latinos, whatever you call them, they are Black wherever they go. But separately, also to embrace the Blackness, right? Not everyone who is a Black Latino is ashamed of being Black or doesn't know they're Black, which is a narrative that's kind of taken off in mainstream conversations that I think is just a little bit intellectually not rigorous, right? There are certainly people who have that perspective, but we cannot have that conversation about them at the expense of all the Black Latinos who are quite proud of being Black and who have been fighting for racial justice forever, right? So part of the effort here was also to raise visibility around Black pride across the Black diaspora and really to locate it within the US context. I am a Black Latina, but I am growing up in upstate New York. It doesn't get more, New York, outside of New York City than that, right? And I'm also African American. And so I'm bringing a whole perspective of having roots in Florida and South Carolina and the Black American experience that is a part of that. So yeah, I hope people feel and see in the title that there's a lot of love and intention in that title. And I hope that some people start to identify that way at a certain point.
Do you have any tips for individuals who may be struggling with honoring or acknowledging all the aspects of their identity in a world that may try to impart monoracism on them? I don't think a good enough amount of people understand the aspect of to state that you can only be one thing and nothing else. That's monoracism is a very specific type of term. Do you have any advice that you would give people or tips to who feel as though, you mentioned this in your book a lot, being told they can only identify with one parent or the other parent and things like that? It's a struggle. What would you say to those people?
Well, it is a struggle. And I think as a coping mechanism, some of us do just choose. We say, look, well, then I'm just this, right? You see me as a Black American, and I'm not going to go out of my way to tell you about these other roots. And I would actually get into it with my mother, who would call me out for that and say, well, why do you just say that you are Black American, but you never say that you're Puerto Rican? It's at a certain point in the book when I'm doing this. And I think her intent, even though maybe the language she used wasn't accurate at the time, her intent was to say, stake your claim, right?
Yeah.
Don't let people erase you. And so in each conversation, it can be exhausting sometimes, but it is okay to say, no, I actually do belong, right? I am a Black Latina. Well, my people are from here. This is my history. This is my culture. Don't allow people to silence you. I think that's really important. And so this journey that I'm on throughout the book is you will see a young girl go from confidence to insecurity, questioning to exploration, to finally making peace with the fullness of who she is. And that is the universal message. It doesn't matter where you come from, even if you are not a Black person or a Black American. I hope that people can see the importance of making space for the fullness of who they are and feel more inspired to do that.
Yeah, one of the things I often get asked because I read so many books is like, what kind of books do I need to read to learn more about different perspectives? Or what kind of books can I read to learn more about cultural humility and cultural competence? And a lot of people go straight to nonfiction books in terms of textbooks and things of that nature. But I always say, like, read people's stories. Like, read about what their lives were like. And I think that this would be a fantastic book to read about the intricacies of someone's experience and their journeys. I always say read about people's lives because you get it from the beginning. We get to hear about little Natasha. I chuckled a little bit at this story, and you guys will get to it when you read the book. You were in the car with your mom, and you said you knew you were having like a little cheeky moment. Can I say what is it a spoiler?
You can say it.
At
It's
one
fine.
point,
Listen.
VP of Griot over here said, "Oh, I want to be white." And I said, and then in the book, you mentioned, like, I knew what I was saying. I knew exactly what I was saying. I was just, having that moment, and I really chuckled, and I was just like, that is just, children really do. Sometimes they are intentional when they try us, because she says in the book, y'all, this isn't even me opining. She said, I knew what I was doing. I just wanted to poke mommy for a little bit. And I was just like, every time they're like
at
children.
5 years old.
At 5 years old, and my son is turning 5 in a little bit, and he'll say stuff, and I'm like, you know what you're saying. But I think that this is another really good example of a book where if you're trying to learn about cultural humility, one of the first things you need to do is look at the narratives that you're reading and the books and the documentaries and all that. And if you are only reading narratives that mirror your own, you're never going to get to an aspect or a space of understanding what someone else is going through and having a different perspective, because lack of diversity in your community and your books and your education and everything is always going to limit you. Diversity contributes to cognitive privilege and the evolution of thought. So if you're only reading books by authors that look like you're putting a cap on your own intellect. And when I was reading this, I may be biased, but I think this book is for everyone personally. When I was reading it, I text you I text you this morning, like, oh man, this book is making me want to go back to school. My husband is going to leave me because it's a very exciting and powerful book, in my opinion. Did you have a specific audience in mind when you wrote it? Because I think sometimes people are like, I'm telling my story and anyone it resonates with is amazing. But then when you're editing, I can only imagine you're like, I want to go more in depth here because somebody may see themselves in this chapter. Or I want to go more in depth at this part because someone may see themselves if I explain it more. Did you have a specific audience in mind when you wrote this?
I did have a lot of people in mind when I was writing, but I have to say I really was thinking of young people. I was thinking of young people who are growing up in America that is more complex, more multi-ethnic, that the demographics are shifting, and who find themselves being put into certain categories and just feel like the fullness of who they are is not seen. But I have to go back to the comment to my mom thing in the car because I almost didn't put it in the book because I was like, Black folks gonna see this and they're gonna be like, come on. But children are aware of social caste and racial caste. We talk about caste. We're talking about Ava DuVernay's, incredible film. And what I was saying with that was that I want the social privilege of white people. Like, why is it that we have to go babysit for them on the weekends and we get to go to like this really nice neighborhood, but then we have to like go back to our house? And it seems like even though technically there's no segregation, right? It's not written into the law,
Yeah.
but it seems like all the Black folks are here and living this way, and all the white folks are here and living this way.
In
Now,
such close
obviously, I have not
proximity.
yet
In such close
right
proximity,
next to
it's
each
just a
other.
car ride away. It's just a car ride
It is a
away.
car ride away.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so obviously, there's class diversity within the Black community. And when I get to Harvard, I see that and I talk about class as well in terms of the diversity within Black community. But at that point, I hadn't seen it. And so I just wanted to be real. And I was like, if you're going to write a memoir, you have to include the awkward moments, the embarrassing moments. You have to be real to paint a portrait of a true human being who's coming into their understanding. And so that's what I wanted for young people. I have seen so many videos of young people getting into the Ivy League or getting into college, and everybody cheers for them and celebrates as if that is the end of the story. It is only the beginning, right? The challenge is only beginning. And too many of our young people will go off to these institutions and not finish, run into incredible moments of self doubt, pain, right? People questioning their abilities, or imposter syndrome where they're questioning themselves. And so I wanted to take the mask off. It just didn't feel enough for me to have gone through these different milestones, really, or hurdles, cleared these hurdles, and not go back and say, this is how I did it. These were the mistakes along the way. And also just know that you are always worthy. None of these places made me who I am. I always was who I am, right? They just gave me different tools to navigate the world. And so that's what I want for young people everywhere. But I do think that no matter your age, you will be reminded of your own journey. That is my hope. And if you feel like you are not seen by society, hopefully this story makes you feel seen.
Yeah, and I appreciate the realness in it, because as someone who specializes in Black identity development, what you're stating is not something that is foreign to me when working with patients like this. For Uzo Amaka, one of the most amazing actresses out there, she mentioned that she always tells a story about she asked her mom to call her Zoe, right? And she's like, can I just be Zoe? And it isn't because there's anything wrong with her amazing name, Uzo Amaka. In fact, in her house, it's the name that she's used to. It's the fact that children grow up and they see manifestations of individuals having freedom that they are not allowed it. So she sees people named Zoe being treated differently. I had a patient who it was a family session, and the mom was freaked out because their son came in saying that. And I was just like, chill. It's okay. They're not, listen, it's okay. We need to have a conversation.
Right, they're not the first to go through this.
It's okay. And I think they automatically see it as like they don't like their culture and they don't like their heritage. And I'm like, no. One of the biggest things I share is that there's racism related stress. There's no such thing as race related stress. And so many times when we're rearing our children, we're talking about they see it this way because you're Black, or you're going to be treated this way because you're Black. And it's not because of your ethnicity or your race. It's because of racism. It has nothing to do with your Blackness. It has everything to do with what that brings out of other people, what that means to them. And it happens a lot. And I appreciated the realness, because I think parents, a lot of times there's different racial socialization, but we do protective and proactive. Proactive is about culture and pride. Protective is about mistrust and biases. And as children get older and we know that they're going to be seen as older, we do less of the cultural pride and we do more of the don't wear hoodies that aren't sky blue, be home at a certain time. So I appreciated the realness, because I think people need to understand that if you get that feeling from your children, it's not about their culture. It's about, what are they seeing that you're not seeing? Are they seeing that people that look like them don't have as much freedoms? And it's not even stuff that you're not seeing. It's stuff that you've just accepted as fact, right? Like, oh, this is just the way it is. And your children are going to be like, why? Why is this the way that this is? Like, why am I supposed to just accept that, like, I don't get to spend weekends kicking it? Why am I supposed to accept that I always have to hear like a huff when someone has to pronounce my name or they try to give me nicknames? Why is it appropriate that the only time I see us on the news is when we're being treated inappropriately? So I appreciated that realness, because I think since your book to me is an amazing book about identity development, I think individuals need to also take a step to think back about, like, hey, in addition to sharing messages about safety, how much am I sharing messages about culture? Am I saying that the issue is race, or am I saying that it's racism? Because I don't want my children to think there's anything wrong with their culture. I want them to think of the aspect of agency within addressing racism, because you can't change who you are, but you can address racism. And it makes you feel hopeless and helpless. And I think a lot of children are feeling this, which is why I specialize in that, Black identity development. When that patient came in and the mom was like, oh my gosh, like, oh my goodness, we need to switch to a different school. And I'm just like, chill. Listen, I like the realness, because sometimes I'll read books and I'm like, okay, but come on. Now everybody's child, it's not all sunshine and rainbows now. Like, I need to feel the aspect of growth. And, we've all had our teenage years and our amazing years. I think one of the themes in this book is that you share the peaks and you share the pits and you share the valleys, right? Because I personally feel like the book is also really good for youth. I think it should be one of those books that, how we have summer reading books, and they're supposed to they're supposed to excite you for the next year and get you ready to make a change, especially from the transition to middle school to high school. When I went to Fisk is also mentioned in the book, but when I went to Fisk, we had to read a book before we started college, and I think it was called The Three Doctors, and it really got you ready for school. I think this book could be that, because
thank you so much.
You're welcome, because you had a lot of career transitions. You had the hedge fund. I didn't even know about the hedge fund. When I was reading that, I was like, she worked at a hedge fund? That don't seem like a place she would want to work. So the hedge fund, and then also as a teacher, and then when you decided to step into journalism, and you're also in school now, and an author. And I just really appreciated the discussion about the career transition. So can you tell me more about that, about your career transitions, and possibly tips for people who may feel like they have to be in one realm and there's no other place for them to go? Because I think that's also another thing that's generationally different. You even said this in your book, mommy, it's not, you don't stay, we're a different generation. You don't have to stay in one job for the rest of your life, the way that your parent, the way you did. And I think that's a generational difference. So can you talk more about your career transitions and possibly tips for people who feel like it's too late for me to change? Because your transitions, they all led up to your perspectives, which I think it's obvious, but your amazing perspectives at stuff. But it wasn't just straight up. You took some risks.
It was not.
You took some risks.
Risks were taken. People reminded me every step of the way. What I will say is that oftentimes we know we're ready to move on.
Mm-hmm.
We know we're ready to move on. And we go through this process of rationalizing every day why we should stay put, how much we don't know about what's on the other side. We worry about what other people will think about what we do. And we're wasting time. We're wasting the time that we know we could be using doing what's really in our heart. And I just look back and I feel bad for that young me who felt like because I hadn't figured something out by 22, that it was just too late. Why are we teaching young people that 22 and 25 is too late to change? I was just getting started as I was turning 30, right? And what is for you is for you. There is no timeline. The speed at which, I'm a person of faith, I believe that God can, take whatever is a traditional expected amount of time it takes to succeed and cut that in half. Mm-hmm. If that is, what is your destiny, right? And so there were people who discouraged me from making certain changes because they're like, oh, it's going to take forever. Do something in media. You're going to have to go here. You're going to have to sacrifice this. And what they didn't realize was that, the vision that I had for myself was just, it was bigger than whatever sacrifices I had to make. And so I was willing to be uncomfortable. I was willing to be considered behind, quote unquote, as my friends and my peers were getting more established. Mm-hmm. I was willing to do those things to go after what I wanted. I literally left a job at 27 and started at the very bottom of a different career path. Yeah. I went from education to journalism and went back to school and started from the bottom. How do you write a news headline? That was where I was starting from, knowing that I wanted to be on TV one day. And although there was a traditional career ladder that said, oh, it's going to take at least 8 to 10 years before you will ever see a top TV market, I ended up in New York City. I ended up on network television at CNN in maybe 7 years. And I did it the non-traditional way. I think that's the key. I did it coming from a Black news website, right? A small, humble website that only had 3 people when I first got there. And now, has a national team and national awards that are on CBS and, all of these things that we've accomplished, all because of that mustard seed of faith and being willing to be humbled in the process and not being afraid to ask for help and call people up and ask for feedback, right? So it's almost like you got to go back to basics when you want to make a change or a pivot. You have to become a student again. Put the pride aside. Don't worry about what people have to say. Be willing to take, certain jobs that maybe don't make a certain amount of money or don't have a lot of social prestige or status, because all you need is that one building block to build from, and you would be amazed what you will find on the other side. So that is my larger sort of take on career pivots. And I hope that the book, by opening up about, how extreme some of my career changes were, will inspire people to know that you really can do it.
Yeah. And so I'm hearing, in addition to all the tips that you mentioned, be comfortable with the discomfort in the first place, and you have to be a student again. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with is, I'm at the top of my game in this realm. And then if I do something different, one, there's the whole sunken cost fallacy. Like, I spent all this time doing it. Now that time is gone. But two, where am I going to start? Like, I have all this power in this realm right now, and now I'm going to start at the bottom. I don't want to start at the bottom. Like, I don't want to do that. So I think it's amazing for you to share, like, you have to be comfortable with discomfort. I tell my son all the time, he'll say, oh, it's hard. And I said, I know it's hard, but you know what? I believe you can do hard things, and we don't get to just not do things because they're hard. I believe you could do hard things. And even in therapy and in mental health, you have to have a comfortable level of just fear or stress or anxiety, or you would never be motivated. If no one was afraid of failing, they wouldn't study. If no one was afraid of like being wrong, they wouldn't try to take in more education, or if they weren't just driven by knowing more. But some people, if you have no motivation, like if I give my students no deadline, my God, I will say, okay,
Yeah,
guys.
no, there's no reason to get it done.
There's no reason to get it done. Okay, guys, you can hand it in Thursday or Saturday or Friday. Like, I've literally had students be like, can you give us a date and a time? Because if not, I'm never going to do this. Like, I'm never going to do this.
At least they're being real with them. At least they're being real with themselves about.
Yeah, so understanding
No, that's why I picked journalism, because I need a deadline.
Yeah.
I'm a hot mess without deadlines. So I was like, I need a career where they're like, look, you need to turn this in by this date, or else, yes, my creative Gemini self would just be floating out in the universe.
And I would also say,
this book, I could have kept working on this book for like 2 more years.
Yeah, but you might just have another. That might just be the second one. This is your first book. Okay, this is your first book.
Yes.
I would also state that you were kind of destined for journalism, winning all those, oratory contests in the first place. So I think that all ties in, because when I was reading that about your childhood, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, she's been good at this.
It seems kind of obvious, right?
Yeah. It seems obvious seeing you now, but
looking back, yes.
Yeah.
And we complicate our lives sometimes, right? We make things way too complicated. We think if somebody compliments us about something that comes naturally, we think, oh, well, that can't be it because that's just too easy.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, no, it's your gift. That's why it's easy. It's easy to you. It's not easy for everybody else. What are you going to do with your gift?
That is a recommendation from that might be, what are the things that are easier for you? That's a good way to identify your gift. Because I think it can help with people. And also there may be something you're like, everyone's good at. I used to think everyone was good at breaking concepts down like simply. Like, oh yeah, you know what that reminds me of? That Jay-Z lyric. Let me tell you about that. And I would be like, everyone can do that. And then I'd be like, oh, everyone cannot do that. Okay.
No. That is a skill. Teacher, doctor.
I was like, I would watch presentations and I'm like, yo, you made that way more complicated. You know how I would have said this? I would have said it this way. That was very complicated. Great paper. But oh my God, that was complicated.
Yes, ma'am.
I think you could break it down easier. So maybe, guys, also look for stuff that's easier for you, that you feel like comes to you, and see if there's a way to utilize those skills in the first place. Because I think it's hard to identify your gifts or your skills in a realm where I think sometimes people just streamline, like, we have to look at things that already are established. And within your realm, I think you kind of I think people say follow the blueprint, but if it's your blueprint, doesn't that mean you get to like make it? Like, don't you get to?
Yes.
It's
And
your
it's your
blueprint.
life. You get to make it. You
Yeah.
get to make it. It does not have to look like everyone else's. That is also, I hope, a lesson of the book. My dream doesn't come true because I took a traditional path. In fact, it was taking the non-traditional path. It was investing in Black owned institutions. And
Yes.
I ended up in the same place as all the other, political analysts and TV pundits. We're at the same table,
Hmm.
but I did it in a way that was authentic and true to my purpose and my mission. So I hope that's inspiring.
I think it's inspiring, but I think
Yeah.
one of the things I got is you trusted your gut. A lot of times there are people that you respected, family and all that, and they weren't always on board. What helped you trust your gut in that way? Because I think it can be really hard to go against, especially when it's not random people, right? This is family and friends and respected colleagues and stuff like that. Like, what was it that made you understand that, like, no, no, I appreciate your comment, and I'm still going to do the way I want to do it because something's telling me that that's the way it should be done.
Oh, I'm just stubborn.
Oh, you're just stubborn. Oh, okay.
or,
Well, that was a quick.
or as my daddy said, you hard headed. You hard headed. I heard that I was hard headed from just ever since I've been on the planet. I've been hard headed. He said there are aspects of our personalities that can be strengths and they can be weaknesses, right?
Okay.
And so in that case, the persistence and the I'm going to follow what's on my heart, it was a strength. There were times when it was not a strength. There were times when it held me back, being so hard-headed and stubborn and not listening. And so the joy of, moving through adulthood is that I've learned to like harness that a bit, and I know when to use it and when to pull back. So
You shared a lot about the health issues that you've dealt with in your life within the book. From, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. I'm going to say ITP. Y'all can look it up.
ITP. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna just say ITP. To also being diagnosed with lupus, and you had to have hip surgery. You use this amazing, I can't remember if it's metaphor or simile, but you mentioned that having chronic illness is like having a bully on the playground, and they beat you up, and they come back and they said, "I'm gonna, I'll be back by lunch," but they don't tell you what day that they're gonna do, what day the lunch is, so you're constantly on guard. Can you share more about how the diagnoses like impacted you, and then also how you got to a place where you prioritized yourself to provide your body with the care it deserves? Because you also mentioned that there was a time when you weren't prioritizing it. What helped you get to the point where you're just like, this is it, like I need to really streamline my wellness and my health so that you could provide your body with the care it deserves, but also, still keep on trucking with all of your aspirations that you've been working on?
Well, I think it was ironic that a person like me, type A, very driven, would get a chronic illness like this one that is so unpredictable and that forces you to sit down, because I always had a mindset of you just push through it, right? If I wasn't feeling well, I wasn't sitting down. I had things to do. I would just push through it. And when you get lupus, pushing through it can be damaging. It can actually damage you. It could damage your organs. It can send you to the hospital. And what you will see in this book is this sort of the stages of grief, right? And the denial stage was pretty long. It was at least a year of me denying that this was real and that I would have to change my life and change the way that I was living in order to manage this. And so to people who have chronic illness, I just say that, this is a new normal, and that is okay. Life takes us through different stages. When I became a mom, that was a new normal, right? And chronic illness, getting this diagnosis, that was a new normal that I had to learn to accept. But it can be very hard. It can be very lonely. The people who you think are your friends and are going to show up for you, sometimes they don't show up for you. When you're in that hospital bed and you're thinking about who to call, right? It just gives you perspective about life and relationships. It also gives you, I think, if you want to look at it glass half full, an appreciation for your mortality and how you are living, and whether you're living a life that you actually want to live. And so when you are healthy, you have to appreciate it and celebrate it, because you don't know when you're going to get sick again.
Yeah.
Right? Or at least you don't know when, certain symptoms might start to flare. You obviously do the best you can to manage it. But never before in life was I like, oh, I had a 2-week stretch of not being sick. This is great. You just sort of take health for granted. And when you have a chronic illness, it's a totally different ball game, right? It can be hard. I was talking about relationships and friendships. You are the one who has to cancel sometimes last minute, and you can't be at everything. And that sucks, and people may think that it's because of, like, you don't want to socialize, but that's not it. It's literally because you have to preserve your energy and your health in order to do basic things. So it has been a hard road with lupus. I wanted to make it visible because it's, called an invisible disease, right? So people may look at you and think, oh, you look perfectly healthy, she's young, and they may even treat you like your symptoms aren't real. This can be particularly hard at work, where you're calling in sick and you have to pull back, and people are like, what's wrong with that person? Is she really sick? So I wanted to make that visible in the story and show what it meant to renegotiate that new normal, for somebody who had been really ambitious and had all these big dreams. And I thought I was going to have to give up my dreams at a certain point, and I obviously didn't. So if anything, obviously, still living, still here,
Thriving.
and that's why people who are in the public eye, I think it's important that we normalize talking about our health and normalize showing how we take care of ourselves, so we can take away that stigma, because that's why people hide, and that's why people suffer in silence, because they think, I can't tell anyone I'm sick. Now, granted, I respect anyone who chooses to keep their health private, because for legal reasons, we know employment discrimination is very real. Discrimination is real. All of that is very real. But I just mean, from a cultural and societal standpoint, I would love to see a day in which it is normal to talk about these things, and you can be open, and we approach it with care and community, and we know how to show up for, our brothers and sisters and loved ones with chronic illness, because I think sometimes we just don't know how. We don't know how. So.
And I think your book helps to take us one step closer to being able to care for our loved ones in that aspect. I feel as though we're only as educated as the narratives that are shared. And by providing just a look into your life when it comes to your journey with identity development, with your career and your life, I'm going to recommend this book to everyone. Of course, I clearly already did on this episode, but I'm going to use it. I'm going to talk to my students. Of course, I'm going to talk to my students about it, because we didn't even get to it, but I'm always trying to tell them to travel and to get out. And one of the most amazing things in the book was seeing the transformative nature when you were able to study abroad, which was another example when you had to fight for that trip. But to go on that trip, I appreciated the inclusion of the emails with your mom and stuff. I saw my mom and the way that you shared your mom in that realm. And I'm also going to have her read the book, because I wanted to talk to her about, like, sometimes I think, especially in our cultures, sometimes you just want more of your props. And I think there are times when moms see that, or a different generation see it as not being humble. And when I was reading the book, I was just like, yeah, I think a lot of moms can resonate with that. And I like the fact that you shared your perspective of being like, man, I would have liked to have gotten my props on this. And, oh, she's doing great. And, we're just going to keep on trugging along. And I think that happens with a lot of people. Long story short, even though whenever people say long story short, in my mind, I always go like too late, because none of my stories are short. Long story short.
I just love you.
Because in my mind, I'm like,
the best.
I've been talking for like 40 minutes. Long story short, I need $5 million. It's like,
you remind me of one of my friends. Can I just say that? I
really?
feel like I've known you for years. That's probably why we just like talk so easy. You remind me of one of my friends from college.
One of the from which college?
She's not a Golden Girl. I know, right? Which university?
Yeah.
No, my girl Natalie from Harvard. Shout out to Natalie. She's a nurse. She focuses on Black mothers and birthing, and just
that's so necessary.
She just is effervescent, just like you.
Oh, but thank you.
Sorry, doctor. distraction. But yes, I feel like we've been friends. We were friends in another life.
Thank you. Effervescent. Oh, I like that. I'm going to tell my husband, someone called me effervescent today. Now, am I going to say whether or not it was a woman? No. Because you always keep them on their game, guys. Yeah, he don't need to know all that. All I can say is I was called...
Keep him on his toes.
I was called effervescent today, and I'm just saying. I really enjoyed the book. It drops today, y'all. Go get the book, okay? Go get the book.
Yes.
It's
tell
amazing.
A friend to tell a friend.
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Gift it to someone.
Yes. Get the book. I love the book. And y'all know I read. I always say I read for a living, okay? If I like the book... okay, it's a good book because I will tell y'all if I didn't like something. I really enjoyed it, and I'm probably gonna hopefully give a copy to my brother so we can talk about career stuff.
Yeah,
just to be like, listen, you can go into all these fields and stuff, but just have some sense. So tell the people where they can find you. I mean, they can find you on TV, but where are the many places they can find you?
Well, beautiful people, thank you for listening to our conversation. This has been amazing. Find me at Natasha S. Alford. I am the same name across all of my Twitter. Well, I still call it Twitter, Instagram. It's Natasha S. Alford. My website, natashasalford.com. And then there's also an AmericanNegra.com because we'll be putting up today some reading questions. So if you have a book club, or you have a classroom and you want this to be a book in your classroom, we've already developed a reading guide for you. So just go ahead and pick that on up. Go to my website, go to AmericanNegra.com. And yeah, let's get this conversation going. Let's use this book to be a catalyst for conversations in our personal lives as well as our community. I hope you all love it.
You will. You will love it. I loved it. If you don't, get your life together. But you will love it. And I love the fact that you did discussion questions alongside of it because the whole purpose, books are supposed to create dialogue and conversation. And I think sometimes people get stumped about what to ask and they don't feel comfortable. So now, y'all, you don't even have to think about discussion questions, y'all. Come on.
It's the teacher in me.
It's the teacher in you. What more do you
Shout
want?
out to HarperCollins.
Yeah.
They also helped. But yes, we worked together and created this guide. So it's HarperCollins approved. So go ahead and download that.
Download that. And I personally think the book should be bought in bulk and given out to schools and stuff like that. Buy it in bulk, y'all. Why buy one when you could buy 100 for your school? Okay.
Yes, you can go to Porchlight, actually. If you go to Porchlight, you can get discounted books. And also, if you go to bookshop.org, there is Black History Month special. So you can get 15% off the book as well. I believe it's, that's
perfect. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. I'm putting all the contact information in the show notes. You will have access to all of that. Make it easy on yourself and read a good book. Read a good book. Sometimes it's risky picking up a book. I'm telling y'all a good one to read. You don't even have to be risky in this realm. Just pick it up. You'll love it. But thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to have you, especially to get this amazing interview on the day of your book release. I feel very look at me getting big guests on the day their book's released. Look at me. This is fantastic.
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.